Okay, I'm recording. So I am going to be going over the mechanisms of self-defense, and this is part one, which is what we did in that first week of class. I do want to record part two, which is what we did yesterday, but that was a lot, so I've only done part one. I'm gonna try and do all of part one in just one video, because last time I did it in I did chapter one, unit one in like 5 videos, and it was just a lot of videos. So I'm gonna try and finish this in one sitting, okay? So it might be like an hour, all right? Okay, so first let's start off with immunity. And immunity is basically our body's way of defending itself. And this could be against pathogens, right? And pathogens are things that make us sick. So this could be viruses, fungi, bacteria, nematodes, which is a fancy way of saying worms. And I mean worms as in WORMS, not WARMS. I mean this type, like the animal. So this is basically how our body chooses to defend itself from pathogens with our immunity. And now there's 3 lines of defense that our body has, right? So we have the first line, the second line, and the third line. But the thing is, the first and second lines of defense are grouped into one called innate immunity, while our third line of defense is just called adaptive immunity. Okay, and now I'm gonna go over the differences between innate and adaptive immunity. We're also gonna talk about inflammation, but inflammation is a member of the second line of defense. So keep that in mind. This is literally like the bane of my existence because you're never going to be able to run away from inflammation. Like it's always going to be there. But you're going to see what I mean in a few minutes, maybe like half an hour, because this is going to take a while. But okay. So first, let's look at the differences between innate versus adaptive immunity. Like what makes them different? Why aren't they just both immunity? Well, the first thing you need to know is that innate immunity is immediate. Okay, so immediately something gets into your body that's not supposed to be there, your innate immunity is going to be activated. All right, while adaptive immunity is delayed. So it takes a little more time for your adaptive immunity to catch up. But there's a reason for this. And while they're taking their time to catch up and to do what they need to do to get ready, your innate immunity, it's already going. It's already gone. It's not even there anymore. It's gone. Another thing you need to know is that your innate immunity is not specific. Okay, so it doesn't care if it's a virus, if it's a bacteria, if it's a worm, if it's a fungi. They're going to treat all of them the same exact way. Adaptive immunity is specific. Okay, so if it's a virus, they're going to treat it differently. If it's a bacteria, they're going to treat it differently. If it's a worm, if it's a fungi, they're going to treat it differently. Like, they are specific. And then innate immunity has no memory. Okay, so say you have a bacteria in your body and your innate immunity kills it off. If you get that same bacteria again, your innate immunity is not going to remember what it did right the first time. So it's going to start the whole process from the beginning. Your adaptive immunity is going to remember. Okay, so they're going to say, okay, last time I stabbed it with a knife and that is what worked. So this time I'm going to stab it with a knife again. Okay, but your innate immunity is going to say, okay, well, first I'm going to try pouring water on it. Then I'm going to try, lighting it on fire. Then I'm going to, it's going to do everything from the beginning. Also, your immunities, both innate and adaptive, are not stabbing people with knives and they're not lighting people on fire. I'm just using that as an example. And then the thing about innate immunity is that you are born with it. Okay, from the minute you are born, you have this, or you kind of develop it. But adaptive immunity is something you have to earn. And by earn, I mean you just kind of get it over time. We'll go over that too, so don't worry too much about it. But just remember that innate is immediate, it's not specific, and it has no memory. Adaptive is the complete opposite. Okay, it takes time, it is specific, and it does have memory. Okay. Now let's talk about the lines of defense. So remember I said the first and second line both belong to innate immunity? Well, let's talk about what those are. So your first line of defense is basically your barriers. Okay, and it's pretty self-explanatory. We have our skin and our mucous membranes for the physical barriers, and for the chemical barriers, we have tears, saliva, stomach acid, normal flora. Like, it's like the basic of the basic, right? From the moment you're born, you're gonna cry. You have tears. From the moment you're born, you have saliva, you have stomach acid, and you have bacteria. Normal flora means bacteria. And you also have all these things. So how do they work? Well, the skin is pretty self-explanatory. All right, your skin is housing everything that is you. So it's preventing things on the outside from getting inside, and it's preventing things on the inside from getting outside. Your mucous membranes do the same thing, except they have mucus, right? So sometimes pathogens will get stuck in the mucus. You know, that's why some people have like dirt in there. That's why like there's mucus in your nose, because when you breathe in and out, the mucus will filter the air. That is a form of immunity. That is your body's way of protecting itself. And then for the chemical barriers, we have tears, right? Like if dust gets in your eye, you're gonna cry, and you're gonna, the tears are gonna wash away the dust. All right. Then we have saliva, which contains enzymes that break down some bacteria. Then we have stomach acid, which is, it's very acidic. That's what I think we're learning in one of our classes. It has a pH of about 2. I'm not really sure about that number, but just know it's like really acidic. That's why it's called stomach acid, okay? And then we have our normal flora. So, this is our normal flora. I'm just going to go a little in depth about it because there's a few things you need to know about how they work, okay? So in our body, we have something called the good bacteria, okay? They just want to help us and see us happy. They don't really do too much. They're just like, oh, he lost an eye. They're just there for the good times, okay? That's the good bacteria. And how do they help us, right? Like how do these bacteria prevent other bacteria from destroying us? Well, number one is they compete with the other bacteria for food, right? So if a pathogen enters your body, it needs to eat. It needs food. But if these bacteria are already eating the food that we are producing in our bodies, then the bad bacteria is not going to be able to do that. Another thing they do is that they block pathogen attachment. So on your body, one of the main ways that an antigen will infect our system is by attaching to a body surface and then dividing or injecting itself. Like there's just many things it can do. But most times, most infections will start when a pathogen attaches itself to our surfaces. But it can't attach itself if there's no space. And guess who's taking up all that space? It's the good bacteria. The next thing they do is that they produce toxins that are deadly to pathogens. One thing you need to remember is that bacteria are still, they're not animals, but for the sake of this analogy, I'm going to call them animals. And in the wild, all right, animals will like do stuff to kill other animals to prevent them from coming into their zone. You know what I mean? Like, what's a good example? Okay, scorpions, right? Scorpions have toxins and they can inject other animals with those toxins and kill them. And that's the same way the good bacteria work. Well, they produce toxins that affect the bad bacteria, and these toxins don't necessarily affect us. There's a host of ways in which this happens, but we don't need to know that for patho. That'd be more of a microbiology topic, and thankfully we're not doing that right now. Next, we have it trains our lymphoid tissue. So our lymphoid is one of our organs, okay? And the lymphoid is primarily responsible for our a bunch of our immune responses. You'll understand what I mean by that in a few minutes, but the lymphoid is primarily responsible for our immune responses. And if there's bacteria in there, then it's going to be training the lymphoid tissue, because the bacteria is still bacteria, even if it's good, okay? It's still bacteria. So it's going to be training our lymphoid tissue, because sometimes the good bacteria can become bad bacteria, right? And they're going to, and when it becomes bad bacteria, our lymphoid tissue will have to develop in order to fight it and like beat it back into submission. Like, hey, you're not a bad bacteria. You're actually good. So become good again for me or something. I don't even know why I went that far with that, but okay. So that's lymphoid tissue, right? It just makes the lymphoid tissue stronger. And this isn't a, I don't know why I did that. This isn't one of the things that good bacteria does. This is just like a fact that broad spectrum antibiotics, right? They kill off bacteria. That's something we're learning in pharm. But the thing is that when you have a broad spectrum antibiotic and you take it, it's going to kill off whatever bacteria you're taking it for, right? Like, so say you have a runny nose and you take a broad spectrum antibiotic to cure your runny nose, that broad spectrum antibiotic will kill that bacteria for the runny nose, but it's also going to kill some of the good bacteria. Okay, and that's why when you have drugs which are broad spectrum antibiotics, they can cause like GI distress and super infections because they're killing off the good bacteria. And if you kill off the good bacteria, then all these things are not going to be able to happen. And if all these things are not able to happen, well, then the bad bacteria is going to come in and be even worse. And that's what leads to super infections and stuff like that. But that's like for pharmacology. This is patho. You don't need to know that for the exam, but you do need to know that for the pharm exam, which is on Monday. So keep it in mind. Okay, that was the first line of defense. Next, we have the second line of defense. And this one, as the name implies, will kick in after the invader gets past the first line. Okay, so even though this is like a really good amount of stuff to have to keep out bacteria, it's not enough. All right, so what happens when the bacteria passes the first line? Well, then we have the second line. And in the second line, we've got things like our white blood cells. And we're talking neutrophils, monocytes, natural killer cells, basophils, and eosinophils. However, for these, they're like very rare in the blood, so we don't need to know them for patho. I just put them here because they're a type of white blood cell, but you don't need to know that basophils are and eosinophils are like important right now, okay? You just need to know that they're white blood cells. All of these are white blood cells. We're gonna mostly focus on neutrophils and macrophages because they're the heavy lifters, but these also play a huge role in our second line of defense. Just remember that. Okay, so, and then another thing about the second line of defense is that we have our complement system that I'm gonna talk about in a few minutes. And then we have fever, interferons, inflammation, okay? Then we have our third line of defense, which is adaptive immunity. And let me see if I can move this. I can't move it. Okay. Adaptive immunity. And there are two main players of this game called adaptive immunity, and that is our T lymphocytes, okay, and our B lymphocytes. And they're like the big guns, all right? So when all of this doesn't work, and all of this doesn't work, we bring in these guys and they will do the job. Except when they don't, then we're actually kind of cooked. And that's when we usually have to go to a hospital or a clinic or take some drugs because these guys failed at their job. But let's not think about that. Let's think about what happens when they succeed or how they succeed. So they are the big guns. They are the popular children of the immune system. And I like to think that the B cell is the chill one and the T cell is the more aggressive one. And there's a reason for this. So just keep that at the back of your pocket that B cells are chill and T cells are aggressive, okay? But they don't work alone. They have friends. They have like their little posse, their little clique of helpers. And we have the helper T cell, who I like to think of as their younger brother. You'll see why I say all this, because I feel like it's easier for me to humanize these things, even though they're just cells. I like to think of T cells, helper T cells, as the younger brother to the B and T lymphocytes, because it's the activator. I'll explain this later. And then we have dendritic cells and macrophages. Okay, there's a whole process that goes into dendrites and stuff, but you don't need to know that for patho. So just remember dendritic cells and macrophages. And these macrophages And these macrophages are the exact same macrophage, okay? There's no two different types of macrophages.